What's up, Internet? What do you mean, you people? My name is Matthew Kroll.
And get your hands out of my pocket. My name is Shahir Dow.
And this is the only podcast about movies special edition entitled
Can Batman Be Black?
That is right. This is our representation in Hollywood episode. And
Bold title.
yes,
I know.
and we've been talking about this for a couple weeks now. And also, I mean, we're you and I are so diverse.
I mean, you've got a Fijian, New Zealand, Indian, and you.
And you have the whitest New Englander you know. So we had to bring in people that were far more just experts on all of these topics than either of us. So we brought in some heavy hitters.
You're very excited about this.
I'm super excited.
This is an exciting moment for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I think our audience should take a pause just right now.
Okay.
And just let you breathe this moment.
I'm gonna do the intro.
If anyone's listened to our Overwatch episodes, you know how much.
Yeah, I'm a fan. Okay, here we go.
Inhale and exhale.
Oh shit.
What was that voice?
Wow. Well, I'll tell you who that voice was. Dear listeners, it is my pleasure to introduce an amazing actor and voiceover artist who you may know from The Affair on Showtime or as the voice behind Overwatch's master hacker Sombra, also the YouTube show Hispanglo-Saxon, which just won an Amayan Award for the best web series.
Good pronunciation.
Yeah, and the queen of all things boop, Carolina Ravassa, what is up?
What is up, Sombra Online?
There we go. Oh, damn.
That all went over my head, except for The Affair, which I love that show. It's a really good show.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Who else we got you here?
Okay, we had to bring another heavy hitter, and if you're going to bring in the gaming heavy hitter of race and representation, I got to bring in my guy, who we've only met a couple of times, so I'm going to try and intro this kind of like maybe like the McGregor Mayweather fight. You know, I'll just list off the things.
Speak from your heart.
Host of True TV's Comedy Knockout, co-host of In the Conversation, cast member of Guy Code and Uncommon Sense with Charlemagne the God, and you may have even seen him in The Amazing Spider-Man and HBO's The Night Of, the incredibly funny, ludicrously hysterical Damian Lemon. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Ludicrously hysterical.
I was just looking for like the most
different.
polysyllabic words I could use to like intro this very, very funny man, very talented guy, and I'm very happy to have you on the show.
That sounds like a rap bar from the 90s. Ludicrously. Yeah, you got to get all the syllables.
You got to quote that on the press.
Yeah.
Ludicrously hysterical.
Yeah.
I really worked on that.
That might be the name of my tour. I've been needing a name.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
That's a long-ass hashtag. We're gonna do it.
No one will know how to spell it.
I won't either. So that's what we'll talk about for the first 5 minutes.
So guys, if you're a listener and you've just joined us for the first time on this episode, I have to say you're joining us at a strange period in our lives. This is I guess you could say it's a transitory episode, although we're not transitioning to
growing
anything.
and changing?
We are changing. We're evolving.
Okay.
This is a special episode, kind of like our Getting Good at Video Game Movies episode. Also our Test of Time episode, perhaps. This is an episode which is not specific to any movie, any one particular movie, but this originated because of a conversation Matt and I had at the end of, I believe it was The Big Sick. Am I right about that?
It probably was.
It probably was.
Yeah.
Seems like a likely contender. At the end of the conversation about The Big Sick, for some reason, Matt and I started talking about race and representation on film. And I think the conversation went on for a good
We
hour
chatted
and
for
a
about
half.
an hour and a half.
Which is unusual because what we like to do as soon as we've done the podcast is get the fuck
Is
out of each
never
other's
talk
face.
to each other
We
again.
don't like to interact out of this room.
We normally fight a lot.
Yeah.
So
So this is going to be an interesting one.
yeah.
All right.
But
Tension.
yeah, a little tension.
Audio tension.
If you'd like to go back and listen to any of our previous episodes where we are just fighting about any other movie, you can find us at www.onlymoviepodcast.com or hit us up on email to request a specific film at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod.
Housekeeping done.
Housekeeping done.
How do you want to start this conversation off, Share?
All right. So speaking from the heart, as Damien said I should.
You shouldn't have told him.
I think we were talking a little bit about our place on the screen. And I was talking about the fact that I'm a Fijian Indian New Zealander who now lives in America.
Wow.
And I don't expect to ever see a person like myself on screen ever at any point. And I think, what that led into a bigger conversation about was two things. One was I've just had a son.
Congrats.
Thank you. He's almost 2 now.
That was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Thank you, Damien. He brings it up every episode like it's something new.
It is.
And I love your kid. He's awesome.
It feels new
Every time I look at him, I'm like,
that congrats sound like a brand new congrats. So he said 2 years. She's like, ooh. Yeah. I'd like to retract.
Yep.
Listen, because every time I go in, I'm like, where did he come from? And like, what is he doing in my house? But I was thinking, I think we got into a conversation about the fact that Mikhail, my son, probably won't see anyone like himself on screen either at any point in his life. He is Indian with a New Zealand heritage. I guess the Fijian part of him is probably far enough back that it probably doesn't count anymore. I'm not expecting him to see anyone like himself on screen. And it got into another part of that conversation, which is that I'm a writer-director, and there was something I was thinking about that really struck me the other day, which was whenever I write any character, they're always default white. Every character I've ever written, I'm writing a feature screenplay right now, default white. And I was wondering how that happened and how that came to be and why that was the case. And I think that's the starting point for where this conversation began.
Well, right after we had this, Carolina, that's when I came across you were tweeting about Hispanglo-Saxon, your web series. Basically, I mean, do you want to give a breakdown of what Hispanglo-Saxon is? You can do it much better, obviously, than I can.
Sure, I'll be real quick. I do a web series where I play all the characters, but it's personal stories that have happened to me in casting or on the street of New York City. I am Hispanic. I grew up in Colombia, the country, not Columbia
Right.
University, and I don't look like a typical Hispanic. I'm a little lighter skinned, and so I go into castings, and they always question my ethnicity. They say, "Oh, but you're white. Oh, but you don't speak Spanish, do you?" And I'm like, "Yes, I do." And then they're like, "Are you sure you do?" And so they're questioning my heritage and my ethnicity because I don't look like what they think is Colombian. And also on the street, I get a lot of cat calls that can be extremely rude, lewd, crass because Latinos assume I don't speak Spanish.
Right.
So they're not just like, hey, pretty lady. It's more like, it gets really, really dark.
Yeah.
And blood boils inside of me because it's like, you can't disrespect me just because you think I don't understand your language.
Yeah.
So anyway, there are vignettes where I'm telling these stories, but why did you ask what?
Well, I will say that in 1 second. The thing that pulled me in, especially, you just mentioned the people talking about you in a different language. The episode, I think it was like 4 or 5 at the restaurant when you were talking about when was that a true story when you were waiting table?
Yeah.
That was so heartbreaking. Basically, it was a character you were playing. You were yourself waiting the tables, and you were the character who was
Brazilian.
And thinking that you couldn't understand her.
Yeah.
And then you dropped did you actually do that? You said like, oh, you forgot your coat.
Yeah, I did. I totally called him out.
And it was like, I don't know. It was a heartbreaking moment. And I don't know. That's sort of what pulled me in and just sort of I watched the rest of the season. The reason I brought it up was because Shahir was talking about how every character is sort of that he's writing is sort of default as white, and sort of we were trying to come up with where we think that comes from. I mean, where that came from, why that's ingrained in your head, Shahir.
Yeah.
And I think it has the origin of that and the origin of your experiences that you portray in Hispanglo-Saxon are kind of the same. And it's just basically this. I don't even know how to put it, but like for the last however many years, Hollywood has been pumping out shit like going like, oh no, this is just how it is. Oh, if you look like this, then you're this. And if you do that, main characters, 90% of them are fucking white, straight dudes. Yeah. And like, so it's just, it was interesting and also saddening. That's like the default for where your brain goes here. That's sort of all the nonsense that you've had to deal with, Carolina. And actually, Damien.
And then Damien, we just wanted a funny dude.
No, thank you. Well, no, I mean, how is your experience? Because you've been in major films and shit. Like, how has that been for you?
I just want to start by saying I'm a black guy. just so the people, you know what I mean? Because we might have a default, be like, who's a white guy?
Yeah.
The room is well represented here.
I never really think about it. You know what I mean? Like, unless it's like a black, unless
you don't. But does casting, like, do you feel like you get called in for the same?
Oh yeah, you definitely get called in for the typical black type of things. You know what I mean? It's criminal, it's thug, it's, you know, or black guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So maybe that presents its own expectation. But then the same thing is I went in for the taxi driver in Spider-Man. I'm not sure if it was a black guy, but they wanted a cab driver.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I try not to, unless it's something that's offensive.
Yeah.
I don't really bug out too much on what the casting breakdown is. I don't act a whole lot, so I don't see a lot of casting breakdowns.
Yeah.
But more often than not, unless it's something offensive, it's like, come on, really?
Right.
You know what I mean? But more often than not, it could kind of run the gamut. It'll just be Ralph. It won't be black guy. You know what I mean? It'll be like, this guy's an IT guy or whatever. I typically, I'm drawn to things where the character has something going on that's deeper than who they identify as. You know what I mean? Or who they are seen as. You know what I mean? Ethnicity. I'll say this, though. I do appreciate black characters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just do. I want to say that.
I think that in general, I feel like they Hollywood.
Yeah. We always talk about the
main
they.
guys.
Man.
The main guys are white or white chicks,
Right.
and then we need to make this movie diverse. Okay, so the cab driver can be. They say any ethnicity or ethnic. And so that means black, Indian, Sikh, Pakistani, whatever typical Nigerian is. And then, or okay, well, let's have an Asian best friend. But now I pay attention to it way more. And I think, wow, the main characters are always white, and the best friend is always that default, the funny black girl, the awkward Asian, the Latina who's loud, but they're always the best friends, the sidekicks. It's never the main characters.
Yeah,
and they just feel the diversity quota comes in on the bit parts, And
it's that's true, and even some of the television stuff that I've done in the past, where it's like you're putting things together, and it feels like, from what the executive side of things, sometimes like, oh, you're checking boxes, and it's like.
Right.
I don't know. It always feels very odd.
So can I take a back step, just like a half step backwards here, because we don't want to just talk to you guys as actors in Hollywood and this is what you're having to deal with. We're also curious, what do you guys like in movies? What do this is a movie podcast. We're just curious, what's your jam? What are the movies that kind of speak to you, that you get really passionate about, that you want to talk about, or what movies you just love?
I used to be really into, because I love acting really dark shit.
Yeah.
So I loved really intense stuff, and and as an actress, I want to watch all these actresses I admire doing these really tough roles, And lately, I just want to watch comedies that don't mean anything. When I've had a tough day, or if you're going through personal shit, it's just I'm watching Younger right now, which is so much freaking fun on Hulu. It's mostly white, and I noticed that, but it's just fun. I don't need to think, and I unwind. So lately I am into crazy comedies and just unwinding with them,
I mean, the world itself is dark enough.
Yes, I know.
How about you, Damien?
It's so funny. I think I might just be conditioned by a good trailer.
Really?
I'm not even really seeking anything until I see the trailer, and I'm like, all right, that looks interesting. I can't really point to. Obviously, I like crime. I like gangster shit. I don't really do a whole lot of science fiction. That's not my thing. I like a good drama. I like comedy. You know what I mean? But more importantly, when I think about when you were saying about just checking boxes, I'm not mad at checking boxes, but I think you need to have some nuance with what you're going to do. If you're going to get somebody that's Colombian, it shouldn't just be that just because they're Colombian.
Right.
It should be yo, I know this Colombian actor or actress that does this one thing so they got range. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Why not build a character that is not defined racially or orientation or anything like that, and then give it to have a wide berth of people audition for it, and then go from there. Unless
I have a thing about that, though. I think the reason why. If you do that, it tends to be the case that defaults to white, because the problem is once you introduce ethnicity into the equation, then that's what that character becomes about. You need to talk about the ethnicity, and And when you're white, there's a there's a kind of default nullification of any kind of historical context to this character. It's just hey, this is the as the word that I'm using is default.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's
what happens 100%. I'm saying I don't like. I wish it didn't. Like I would. That's the.
Yeah.
I will say though, lately I have seen a lot more breakdowns that it says open to all ethnicities, and it's a detective and they are seeing every ethnicity, or she's a doctor and they are seeing Asian, white, Latino, whatever, Arab. So I do think that more and more we're seeing it. Not as much as we'd like, but I have been going in for roles that are more complex or that aren't just like Latina prostitute. Really. I've been lately yoga teacher, detective, doctor, FBI agent.
Yeah.
So I feel like, oh God, thank you. It's not just, oh, she's Latina, let's bring her in for this. It's like, no, she's got an interesting look, or look at her resume and her acting reel. So I think that we're getting there, but it's a long road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I had just an interesting experience because I just directed a car commercial, and for a fairly high level brand, I won't say what it was, and it was a particular spot where they wanted
wasn't no Corolla.
It wasn't a Corolla. No.
It was high level.
Yeah, high level. That's my definition. I'm completely in the marketing world of vehicles.
Kia.
But it was this particular brand. It was the first car commercial that they wanted to do with a female lead, and I thought, okay, that's great. That we're doing. Normally, typically, it's a guy in this car. And then the thing that I had, and it was a weird moment of realization for me, is that we went through all the casting and it was like, it was completely open to any ethnicity. There was no question about it whatsoever. But once we cast the person, we cast a really great actress. I was very, very happy with this. The problem I started thinking about was like, how do we default, especially in a commercial, which is only 30 seconds long, how do we default explain this woman driving this fairly expensive car on her own in a house by herself? And I was like, and I know that sounds terrible.
You have to?
Exactly. You don't have to, but that was the thought process I was having, was like, why can't this person just exist in this car? Yeah. And why do I have to find ways to define that? Yeah. And I think the reason is that when you're making stuff and you're on the other side of the camera, what you're thinking about is what's the shorthand for character. So you're trying to think about like, well, what is the shorthand that the audience is going to like understand this thing really quickly? Now, I know exactly what you're thinking, which is that
I was making a face so people could. Yeah.
No, it's exactly what Carolina was saying as well. It's that the shorthand is whatever you want it to be, and it should just be whatever if this is the case, then this is the case. But I was kind of like, and I think the brand was actually really progressive in this regard. They were like, hey, we're just going to do this. But I was kind of like, I was thinking about like, oh, how do I set dress this house so that I give enough information for people to know that this person is like an independent, successful woman without having to like say that. Like, and because in car commercials, or in any kind of commercials, that's a kind of story that there's not necessarily a shorthand for that story.
So you didn't cast a white woman?
We did, actually.
Huh. Even more interesting that you're saying that, because I would have assumed that maybe, again, the woman is the factor. It's not a man. So that's why you feel like you have to explain it. But I assumed maybe she was black or Latina.
No, actually, I think the factor
she's not affluent white.
No, the factor was young. She was very young for this particular brand of car. And so we were kind of like, how do we...
Is she a YouTuber? No, I'm kidding. That could be it. She makes millions if she's a YouTuber.
Yeah. So no. And I know this is kind of like, this gets into that sort of sensitive territory, but that's kind of what I wanted to talk about here is like, we're talking about like the way in which we represent people. And, and I think, we've already mentioned the word diversity a couple of times in this conversation, but what does diversity actually mean? And like,
it means not white. That's what it means. It's either white or diverse.
In this context, kind of, like that's...
But here's the thing. To me, the thing that's tricky about saying diverse is that you're still kind of butting up against the baseline, and the baseline is white. Right. Like when you say diverse, you're not saying
fat white guy.
Yeah, you're basically saying the default's still white. We're going to go do something other than that.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing I was trying to think about a little bit.
I think it's because historically it has been white. So now we, are moving towards something more diverse. Once it becomes the norm, it won't be a term we use anymore, I think.
Right.
So I think that like why do we do an all black what was that show? Wizard of Oz on CBS or whatever?
The Wiz.
The Wiz, thank you. It was like, oh, well, that's racist. Why aren't there any white people in there? Why is it all black? Guys, the point is it has been all white forever. So we are making it more diverse. Once this becomes the norm and once women get paid as much as men do, and once, once we don't have to say, we do have to specify gay. Whereas characters that aren't gay aren't said, you don't specify if they're hetero. So I think we will reach a point where we don't have, it doesn't become so, terminology specific.
Right.
I want to go back to if we can.
Yeah, no, please.
Totally.
I was thinking about this a lot. I mean, my grandma is from Wisconsin. She's got blue eyes and blonde hair. And so yes, there's a lot of white in me, as much as there is Latino and maybe some Arab because we're from Spain. But so I grew up in looking white, and passing. That's a horrible term, but people just assume, oh, here they think I'm a white girl, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's I was thinking about when was the first time that I thought about ethnicity being properly portrayed in film and television.
Right.
And growing up, we'd watch Friends and we'd watch Hollywood movies and all this stuff. And for me, it was just normal that they were all white people, but because I was kind of sort of white, But I find it so interesting that for you, it's also the default when you don't look white, So it's fascinating that I was feeling guilty. Why didn't it hit me later on in life that there is no diversity in this stupid movie, even though I'm Hispanic and we, everybody I know talks like this and I want that diversity.
Yeah.
Is it because, and this is just a guesstimate, growing up, just when we're all kids and we're all experiencing, let's just use movies as an example, right? We're all experiencing whatever films we watched growing up, especially back when years ago, whenever that was, we were only shown, in this case, white dudes mostly, or white women, we were only shown that. Right. And that even became that. So when we're younger, before we're even thinking about race, we're not even thinking about sort of what that means when we're little, we're seeing, oh, well, all the people in Hollywood look like this. This is what Hollywood people look like. This is what actors look like. Right. And is that where it could that be the genesis? And obviously there's the more messed up shit later down the line, but is that sort of where it's like we in this room come from and why that is the default?
So the way I was kind of,
I don't know.
What?
I want to ask Damien, did you, as a kid, did you watch movies and say, oh, these are white people movies? Or, oh, there's too many white people in that. Why aren't there any more black people?
I didn't really think about it until and I thought about that question, when I saw myself or whatever reflected. Yeah. I probably didn't think about race in movies until maybe I started watching Spike Lee movies.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then it was it was a big thing. That the news was there's a black director, he's making black movies and we're watching these black movies and it became something of, there was some cachet to it. You started to feel the story was, y'all are underserved. Right. What I mean? This is your guy. You know what I mean? This is the black movie or whatever. And then at that point, maybe that's what it started to process. But I know later on, when I, is to do comedy, there's certain assignments that I would give when I talk to certain white people. I say, you like TV show white, like TGI Friday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's a certain type of white. You like a white.
Yeah. It's like Rachel from Friends.
You know what I mean? There's certain white folks that are just like regular. I wouldn't classify them as, oh, that's the prototypical white person.
Right.
You know what I mean? And but back to your thing about default, I think, because I grew up around so many black people until a little later, then in high school, junior high, we got more diverse or whatever. But initially, it was black people, right? So when I did do a default, and maybe it was influenced by Spike Lee or whatever, you started to realize how special or how niche movies about you were.
Right.
So but then I was like, I like that shit. I like, there's some power in, I want to tell more of my own stories. It kind of almost feels like a political thing.
Yeah.
Like I got to represent for my own people. So when I would write a script, the default would typically be people I knew. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't be the main character wouldn't be a white guy. It would probably be me or somebody that I knew that was familiar to me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's how I looked at it.
So just to back up, I asked everyone here today to kind of, just so they had some time to think about it and weren't put on the spot. What was a film or TV show that made you think about race for the first time, or just made you kind of like conscious of it in a way that, like, when you're watching Saturday morning cartoons, you don't think about, but all of a sudden, this one particular film, TV show, whatever it was, made you think about it. Matt, do you want to? We kind of.
Well, it's funny you bring up, not watching Saturday morning cartoons, because I think honestly a Saturday morning cartoon was what actually made me think about it, which was Captain Planet.
Okay. He's a hero.
Gonna take pollution down to zero. I know the whole words. We don't need to go into
I was
it.
gonna sing it.
Do it.
No.
Okay. No, because there was a diverse cast of kids in that. And granted, who knows if the voice actors were actually the people that they were portraying, but at least that was when I sort of was like, oh, like that's when the wheels at least started turning. Yeah. And then it's I was about to say it's interesting, but it's not. Growing up as a white kid. No, but because so the sort of stuff we've set up even beforehand, like default and all that stuff, like there's moments where you realize it from where I'm sort of coming from, and then because it's so prevalent, you don't until you start like actually engaging in sort of I want to say, and this sounds, I don't want to sound too pretentious, but sort of like the art half of it, like when you graduate from watching entertainment just to be entertained to starting to think about what entertainment means, that's when like that's when I really started thinking about it. There were pockets like Captain Planet where I was like, oh, this makes sense. I'm like, why isn't that? But then like in my little kid brain, it would just go boop because I'm just getting thrown all the white guy shit. So that was mine. Do you want to just go around, Carolina?
Yeah,
sure. I mean, I think I thought about Crash, the movie,
right?
Just because it's obvious, because it's so obvious, you know. But growing up, acting as a kid in school, we did musicals, and musicals are very American, and so we didn't think about like. We were all a bunch of freaking Colombians doing a musical. Yeah. So if we're doing Oklahoma, we aren't like, oh, well, there's one Latino role, so you get to do that. And then like the other white role, sorry, you can't do them. Like we just did all the musicals as us doing them, right?
Yeah. Right.
So when I got to college and I started, we started auditioning for things like junior year, they're like, oh my God, we're going to do Marisol by Jose Rivera. Carolina, you would be great for that.
Right.
And I was the one Latina maybe in my theater department, Boston. And yes, I played Marisol, which was a lovely experience, right?
Sure.
But it's funny that like all of a sudden it became, Caroline would be great as Marisol for the first time. Like that was the one role that I'd be right for. Right. Why wasn't I right for, like random Lady M or for like, maybe I was, but you know what I mean? Like it became about ethnicity instead of it could, I could have. You could have been. I could have been right for other stuff too. I mean, it was. I think maybe I was random tree on the left a couple. Yeah. Times. You know what I mean, though. Like it was such a specific. For me, it was like, oh, I'm going to start auditioning for Latina roles, not just the lead that could happen to be whatever. So Yeah. And that was, again, my acting career. It started there, so that's where I thought about it more. But I remember in Crash just thinking, oh my God, they think the wife's a prostitute. Holy cow. Like, or, you know what I mean? Because it was just so obvious and on the head. And I think that we needed that, because Hollywood has been so
It's not a great movie, Crash. I got to admit, it's not a great movie, but it has like some good moments in it.
I like how you had to let that rock.
I was like, listen, Crash is not a good movie. I'm just going to like put that out there.
He unhosted his piece and I got to bust my gun.
What else don't you like to hear?
No, but wait a minute. If you as an Indian, Fijian, Kiwi, still defaults to white characters, imagine all of white America that just keeps thinking that's the norm. So a movie like Crash that you didn't think was that great, still, like, it needed to be on the nose for people to frickin' get the point.
Right.
Yeah,
of course.
Do you imagine if we are diverse?
No. And listen, there are Crash surprisingly has some very, very good moments in it. I just think
These are all sounding like backhanded compliments to Crash.
Right.
I think it's a look. We're not here to debate Crash.
This is the only podcast about the film Crash.
We could do David Cronenberg's Crash. You know, the James Spader film about people who crash.
And now you're just going into your deep. Now you're just going into your deep dive.
All right. So I apologize. I should. It's an interesting. You know, like
fuck
it is
Crash. Just get it out your system. Say fuck Crash
It's an interesting
and Luda.
It's an interesting moment. Was it Sandra Bullock and Brendan Fraser in that movie as well?
Sandra Bullock was in Speed.
No, she was in Crash.
She was in
But she crashed in Speed and then landed in Crash.
You can both be right.
Landed in Crash.
No, that's. I think that's actually a really good reference point as well, because I think we're all like there is you're right. It has to be on the if you've never had to think about it before, it has to be on the nose. And like Crash is a good example because obviously Crash won Best Picture that year, and I think it was in 2007. I want to say something like that. 2000, maybe 2005. But that was an interesting year for cinema as well, because there was a film that I think was a better film about representation, that was about a gay cowboy that came out that year, Brokeback Mountain, that did a much better job of portraying that world in a way that didn't feel
white
subtle.
Dudes, though.
Still white dudes,
With
but
white wives, you know what I mean?
yeah, it has to do with the topic of the film or the way in which the film tells its story that I think that works. I don't want to litigate on Crash. Damien, have you got a film that you
know what? I was thinking, I guess film, TV, what? Right. I was thinking Do the Right Thing, right?
Right.
Again, back to the whole Spike Lee thing, because that was the story, that was the narrative, right?
Yeah.
But then before that, now that I think about it, because that was a narrative, it was like, yo, look, y'all getting your look, right? That was Hollywood.
It was very
like,
meta.
Listen, black folks, stop crying. Here you go.
Yeah.
But before that, you start thinking about, and it's not anything that is conscious. It's just, because as a kid, you probably weren't thinking about like representation. That's a little sophisticated.
Yeah, of course.
But you would watch Different Strokes, or you would know the black character from every show, Tootie, my man on, you know what I mean? Like, you vote for the black family on Family Feud, the black wrestler, love
Apollo
Junkyard
Creed
Dog.
is your guy.
You love Apollo Creed because that's your people.
Yeah.
But I guess where it had the conversation was like, it was articulated. It was probably what a lot of the Spike Lee movies. She's Got to Have It.
Do the Right Thing.
Do the Right Thing.
Jungle Fever.
That was definitely on the nose.
Yeah.
So those were probably, especially Do the Right Thing, because it was about race issues.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's probably the first time I really looked at it. And then it became a genre.
Right.
It was black film. It became a genre. So now it became a movement. He paid a little bit more attention to it. I do want to add, though, just as somebody growing up black, you know what I mean? Growing up, I guess, in the hood or whatever.
Yeah.
There was this thing where it wasn't enough for you to be black on TV or film, but you had to hold it down. You had to represent. Like, you couldn't be a cornball.
Right.
Because then we're not really embracing you. You had to kill that shit. Like, you had to represent. And as ambiguous as that is, it is not like immediately I can watch a show and I can be like, nah, I don't really identify with him. Oh, she killed it or he killed it. Like that type of thing. Like it's visceral when you see it. You like, and not to say black is a monolith, because the people that I might be carving out, somebody else could be like, oh, that's me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was just that type of thing.
I got you.
And I think that's what Spike Lee was really good at, was that he didn't just display blackness as like one thing. There was like a whole spectrum of blackness in that, and especially in Do the Right Thing. That was actually, so the thing for me was I grew up pretty much being the only brown person I knew for most part of when we left Fiji, I was one of many brown people. In fact, it was very rare to see a white person.
Right.
And then when we moved to New Zealand, I was basically the only brown person I know. But the thing was, I don't have a hang up about it. I wasn't like walking around, all upset about it or anything like that. My friends are my friends. We got on just as we did. There would be like interesting moments where someone would say something in front of me that they that I think that they'd never said in front of a brown person, so they weren't expecting it to like suddenly become a deal, and that happened a lot. I've made a film about that. But Do the Right Thing was actually a really formative film for me, but not because of race. I just loved that movie, and it was a weird thing because I think I was the only person I knew that loved that movie, and so I would watch it. I bought like the MJ baseball top that Mookie used to have. You know, he had like, and I bought the sneakers and everything, and I was just really into that movie, kind of just from a world point of view. It felt like I didn't feel like it was my people or anything like that. I didn't think I was black or anything like that, but I just felt like I love the world of this film and I love what this film is doing. But the film that really kind of made me think about race
was Crash.
It was Crash. It was definitely Crash. It was that was the one. No, it was Malcolm X, and it was and there was one scene in particular in Malcolm X where Malcolm meets like someone from the Nation of Islam in prison, and the guy and I forget the character's name, but the guy tells him like, "Hey, let's go to the dictionary and like find out what the word black means in the dictionary, and then let's go find out what the word white means in the dictionary." And there's this moment where, and it was like this thing that I did after I watched that movie, which was that I went into the dictionary and I was like, hey, I've never thought about this, but when you say black, you don't just mean a person with a different pigmentation than you. You're talking, if you think about it in sort of semiotic loaded terms, which is what that scene is about. Black means dark, sullen, soiled, mischievous, evil.
If you're not black.
And then white, contrary to that, means innocent, pure, good intentioned. And I'm not saying that that's what people are. I'm just saying that that's the moment I suddenly started thinking about, hey, when a character is walking down the street and gets arrested in the crime show I'm watching, they're always black. Why is that?
Right.
Like just the background character is always black and the foreground characters are always white. Like when I watched Sledgehammer as a kid, which is a comedy that I used to love, there were very few black characters on there. Again, I didn't think that, there's no characters, with like my ethnicity or heritage in any of this, but that was the kind of thing that I gravitated towards. And it was the turning point for me where I started thinking about race in film a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, I was Captain Planet.
Yeah, Matt was Captain Planet.
Captain Planet. Right.
All the colors of the rainbow over here.
The power is ours.
Matt, I didn't know you were a white guy.
What?
I maybe assumed you were white, but then like when you were saying we're gonna talk about race and film and all of that, I was like, is Matt Latino? Like I didn't know. I know you from
So New
Hampshire.
I am from New Hampshire.
Right.
I am.
Makes you white by default.
Exactly. If nothing else, just via the snow.
Right.
I think so. My background is very mutt.
Okay.
I have a little bit of almost everything in me. There's Chinese, there's Polish, Italian, a couple other different things.
Yeah.
Also, 6.25 or something percent Native American Blackfoot
You've done that
tribe.
DNA test, haven't you?
And so it's interesting because I've tried to sort of like look into that, but that tribe is extinct. They don't exist anymore.
No Wikipedia page.
So something we were talking about now, that's like a great sort of transition into another sort of aspect of this is I've talked about a couple times on this show because we're talking about like, okay, white is currently default and just sort of like, oh, that's just the thing.
Yeah.
Because I am a bit of I'm a super mixed, but just like I'm a white dude. I don't ever feel like I always say I don't have a tribe. Right.
Okay.
I don't have a heritage because it was so mixed. Like I can't just be like, I'm Polish, I'm Italian, I'm German. Like I don't have that. My family was never sort of about that. Right. So I'm always drawn like, okay, let's get deep. I feel like I don't have sort of like a back, like a people that I can sort of relate to because I wasn't brought up that way. I'm not religious, so I don't have that sort of grouping of people. Right. And weirdly enough, I don't like the only sort of grouping that I've ever experienced that I feel sort of a part of, oddly enough, is sort of like sort of the nerdier side of culture, which is why I do comic books and video games and Overwatch and like all that. Just sort of like that's sort of been my place where I'm like, oh, like That's where
These are my
I am.
people.
These are my people. And those people can be any color, any ethnicity.
And so how do I put it? We've all determined that it's 100% right to have like as every type of person represented, right? Like that just seems like the best thing to do. But also, let's even take like morals out of it. Personally, for me, I'm bored with standard white dude shit.
Right.
I want different, interesting characters. And that's why I'm drawn to sort of different, interesting films, games, etc. Hell, and I hate to bring it back to Overwatch again, but
I was gonna say,
but like that's a reason why. I mean, you travel, Carolina, all over the freaking world talking to people that this game has sort of touched. And at the end, so Overwatch is a first-person shooter. It's like a team shooter that has sort of a minimal story built into the actual game. But they do these animated shorts, which you were a part of, and the cast of characters in this game are. It's amazingly diverse, and that's something that I think I'm hoping that even in gaming and even beyond that, people sort of see that and be like, oh shit, like this is touching not just one particular group of like. I feel like games a lot of times are marketed towards like fucking like 16-year-old white kids, and this is something where like it's like no, like everyone has latched on, and everyone it can find a bit of themselves, which actually this will bring into another one of your questions before is so how important is it to see yourself in media?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people see themselves in Overwatch characters. I think,
100%.
Yeah. I just think that's, I don't know. I'm sort of rambling at this point, but
I think that's unique to gaming though as well, because gaming is really about the transference of experience. You know, like you are being
You
put
play
in
that character.
you're being put in the place of like doing that character. So
sure.
So like,
But for the most part, it has been white.
Yeah, of course
White
it has.
dudes
Yeah,
with
yeah.
guns, like
Yeah.
military dudes, and it
what was
kind
that
of usually
Shaquille
southern,
O'Neal,
right?
Shaq Fu?
Shaq Fu? Yeah, that was
Wow.
that's the one game I'm
Street
thinking
Fighter.
about.
Yeah.
Street Fighter,
Yep.
yeah, it's Street Fighter.
Street Fighter made you think about traveling. You know what I mean?
Thailand, USSR.
Very quickly.
Oh shit! I gotta get on a plane.
I think that's a like a really good question is like, is it important to see yourself on screen?
Yeah.
Like, does it matter?
Growing up, I didn't realize that it wasn't important. Now, I think it is 100% important, especially for minorities in the U.S. or anywhere. Once you start seeing a black president, thank God Obama exists.
Yeah.
Once you start seeing a female president on screen, even if it's just in television, you go, I could be that. Like, really, kids are that affected. And when you see little black girls holding up a Barbie that has an afro and geeking out because she finally found herself and doesn't have to play with blonde white Barbie, that's when you realize how important it is that a fucking doll, is telling them, oh, I can be this beautiful. Oprah has a story where she was, one of the women who most affected her was this white woman. I can't remember what her name was, blonde. And she just looked at Oprah when Oprah was really young and said, you are the most beautiful little girl ever. And Oprah was like, oh my God, a white woman is telling me I am beautiful. Because Oprah thought, I'm black, I'm not as beautiful as she is. Because that's what media tells us, that you're so beautiful. And so I think especially girls too, because I mean, this is a whole other gender thing. But I went to Kuwait just now and I met gamer fans that are female and they're wearing hijabs or burqas, and they love Overwatch. Like they are hardcore gamers and they're really good. And there's no hijab wearing character yet in Overwatch, although there are 2 Egyptian characters. But I was just like, oh my God, of course. Like once you see yourself, then you're like, I can be a superhero too, As corny as this sounds, when I see Latina characters that aren't just the immigrant who's here illegally and then is getting deported because she was selling drugs. Yeah. Like that, Maria Full of Grace was the first
Maria
Latina character. Yeah. And yes, it's a Colombian movie that put us in the spotlight and, the actress is great and all this good stuff. But it was about, being a mule for drugs. Yeah. Right. Instead of, I'm this Latino who became a lawyer and I'm kicking ass in the States,
Right. Yeah. I think that's it is an interesting point. I guess, because I'm coming from a point of view where the thing that I notice as well with my family is that whenever we're watching TV or watching a movie or something like that, and there's a brown character, it doesn't matter what they're doing. It's like, my parents will not be interested in this movie, but if there's a brown character, that's a reason to watch the movie.
That's great.
They will they'll shout at me from the other end of the room. I remember in New Zealand, there was this one Indian guy who played a doctor on this like long running soap opera in New Zealand called Shortland Street, and like it was just suddenly like a big deal to watch Shortland Street because it was like one of us was on the screen, so it really matters. And like I was saying that I've never really experienced. I didn't grow up watching myself on screen. There's a show right now which my wife was watching called Saving Hope or something like that. It's a hospital drama. She just watches it just to like because it's like in the back. It's something to watch in the background kind of thing.
It's American.
It's American. There's literally a character named Shahir on the show, and I was like, I've never even heard my name. Like I've never heard.
Is a white guy?
No.
White guy, blue eyes.
Indian neurosurgeon with my name, and I was like.
Do you know what it is too, though? Is diversity in the writers' rooms and the producing rooms.
Yeah.
You know, Mindy Kaling, Aziz Ansari, all of them doing their thing. And now it's not just, I'm going to show you what my family sounds like.
You're not going to Ashton Kutcher it up.
Right. You know, but and yes, even if your parents do talk like that, you grew up speaking differently, and it's okay to show all the shades of immigrantness that we have, you know. But once we start seeing that, I think it's coming from the writers' room because they're telling their stories that are about real three-dimensional humans, not just the cab driver who got arrested.
You know what's funny about this experience though, like of seeing just for the first time ever seeing someone else with my name because I've never seen that before. I suddenly went through this whole process. My brain was like, has this person heard of me? Have they like Googled? Were they Googling
like to the podcast?
Yeah. Were they Googling like Indian names and like came across my name somewhere? You know, because it's so specific. And I was like, and then I started thinking about like, what's it like being David Smith? You know, like what's it like being David Smith?
I'll tell you. From a Matthew perspective, most characters named Matthew in movies are evil.
Right.
I was gonna say, do you identify? No.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I just watched, which actually this will be interesting to talk about too. I just watched Wind River. The Jeremy Renner, the talented Olsen sister,
Taylor Sheridan,
Mary. No, not Mary Kate.
Elizabeth Olsen.
Yeah, thank you,
Elizabeth Olsen.
The talented
one.
The talented Miss
less
Olsen.
fucking rich. Yeah. She took her
made me
talents
say
instead
that.
of rich.
I have a thing against it. Whatever.
Hey, they were great when they were on that little show of the family.
100%.
You know.
But they wouldn't come back for the Netflix show because they're too good. So I just watched. Wind River. I got so distracted I forgot why I brought up Wind River.
Matthew.
Oh, thank you. Like with one of the dudes who you sort of believe is like the bad person or someone who like murdered a person, Matthew. Instantly, whenever I hear my name on screen, they're a fucking psychopath or a murderer.
Right.
And I'm just like, okay, but that's neither here nor there.
Boo-hoo.
I know.
Poor
No.
Matt.
But here's the deal.
I'm kidding.
No, and I know my thing is irrational. It's not a logistical. Like I'm not
really.
What I'm just talking about
such
is
a big deal.
It's such a big deal to suddenly like whenever my wife does this thing, whenever he's on the show, she like grabs me by the shoulder and she's like, look, here he is. And I was like, and it's this moment and I'm like, hey, look.
No, that's real. And you feel that shit.
And I've like for like living my entire life and never having that experience to like suddenly have that experience is like, whoa,
it's real.
Is this what it feels like?
Well, Damien ain't the most common name.
Well,
I mean, it's
the Omen.
somewhat. It's the Omen. It's the only reference. Oh, you the fucking Omen. You know what I mean? But like when you go to like these amusement parks and they got the little fake license plates with
the
your
Coca-Cola
name
names.
I'm sure they got Matthew and probably got Carolina. They don't have us.
They probably have Caroline, right? But not Carolina.
Caroline. Yeah, Carolina is from,
That's
like,
that
so
might
it's
be,
Caroline.
they might not have, so, you know what I mean? Like I remember, I'm dating myself, but I remember there was a show called Romper Room, right?
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of Romper Room, she used to look in the camera, she'd be like, I see you, Matthew. I see you, Carolina. She ain't never say Damien. So when you finally get that look, you're like, oh, shit. It means something. Yeah, fucking means
Well, Damien, you're the least Antichrist person I know.
Thank you.
I want to play you guys just a little clip from Riz Ahmed, who is an actor who was in The Night Of.
Right.
Yeah.
He recently went to Parliament.
I'm in love with him. I hope he hears this podcast.
I'm sure he's listening in. I met him once briefly in New Zealand. Very, very nice guy.
You've met everyone.
Very briefly, like to a point where I doubt he
Talk again how you and Soderbergh are best friends.
Oh, yeah. We met that one time.
shit.
Riz Ahmed went to Parliament after the Brexit vote and engaged in a conversation about cultural representation on screen. And I wanted to play you a clip from this because it relates to, I think, the roles that he gets offered as an actor, and the kind of the things that the reason he thinks it's important to see not just diversity on screen, but representation on screen. So it's not just the case of like tokenism or like, and I think that was my point when I was talking about diversity, is that it's not just about like filling a quota or expanding out from the baseline, but jumping into something where it's actually like, hey, these are the people that live around us. These are the people that live in our lives. Yeah. So I want to just play you this clip.
What's at stake here? I mean, in this age of populism, it can sometimes seem like talking about diversity is kind of swimming against the current, going against the grain. It's political correctness gone mad and all that kind of thing, right? It's an added extra, it's a frill, it's a luxury. That's what diversity can sound like. The very phrase actually turns me off a little bit. It sounds like there's a core, a benchmark against which everything is measured, and then there's a little bit of something you could sprinkle on top. A little bit of salt, a little bit of spice. It's something you can live with, but you can also live without. And to me, that really doesn't put into focus how crucial what we are talking about really is. We're talking about representation, not diversity. Representation is not an added extra, it's not a frill. It's absolutely fundamental to what people expect from culture and from politics. After the Brexit vote, hate crimes went up 41%. Against Muslims, they went up 326%. In the 1930s, we had a very similar situation to what we have today. Political polarization, economic disenfranchisement after a big financial crash, rising inequality, systematic scapegoating of certain minorities. What's at stake here is whether or not we will move forwards together, or whether we will leave people behind. If you're used to seeing yourself reflected in culture, I really want you to take a minute to kind of understand how much it means to someone who doesn't, to see themselves reflected back. Every time you see yourself in a magazine, in a billboard, TV, film, it's a message that you matter, that you're part of the national story, that you're valued. You feel represented. Now, if we fail to represent people in our mainstream narratives, they'll switch off. They'll retreat to fringe narratives, to filter bubbles online, and sometimes even off to Syria. In the mind of the ISIS recruit, he's a version of James Bond, right? In their mind, everyone thinks they're the good guy. Have you seen some of these ISIS propaganda videos? They're cut like action movies. Where's the counter-narrative? Where are we telling these kids that they can be heroes in our stories, that they're valued?
So the bubbles don't have to be like specifically your ethnicity as well. It can be your country. I think if if someone from the Ukraine suddenly saw a Ukrainian character in a big American movie, it would be a big deal.
Yeah. So I think right after even that clip, this is a great time to get to the title question. The
title question
of our episode.
Yeah.
Can Batman be black? And we're using black as just sort of can Bruce Wayne / Batman be anything but a white dude?
And this started, and I remember having this conversation when I was a kid with a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine. Again, I was like the brown kid in white communities, and the debate came up about James Bond, and it was I was like, why can't James Bond be black?
Right.
And this friend of mine was just adamant. He was just like, no, James Bond can't be black. Now you got to remember, this is time and place, context. This was early 90s.
Some people say it still.
Yeah, exactly. But and even now you have this, whenever it's brought up that Idris Elba might become the next James Bond, there's an entire uproar. And I don't know how much of that is just good manufactured marketing, good manufactured protest for the sake of it. But that, that question is the reason I wanted to bring that up is that when we talk about diversity, we talk about the creation of something new. But the problem that I think that happens in representation is that there is a foundation that people who aren't aren't white, for example, have never been invited to take part in a meaningful way.
Right.
And so I was curious about that question, can Batman be black? And I actually I'm of two minds about this whole this question. And of course, we're just using Batman as a thing because I like the alliteration, Batman be black. But it could be any character. Could Tony Stark be black? Could Captain America be black? Could Superman? I think someone put
it also gets interesting, and if we're going to talk sort of the superhero angle, the interesting part is Captain America has been black. Steve Rogers hasn't been black, but Sam Wilson has become Captain America. And then there's the whole
Spider-Man with Miles Morales.
So there's the sort of two minds of the entire thing being like, because Marvel in particular right now, the mantles have passed to different races, ethnicities, orientations of people. Miss Marvel is Pakistani. The new Iron Man is a 15-year-old African-American girl. Like there's like all of these,
but they're new characters.
They're new characters.
Right.
They're not like Tony Stark is not now black.
Right.
Now there's two minds of it, and we talked about this before when we even had this sort of offline conversation about it. And I think this is honestly from odd conditioning, and I think a little bit of nerd culture coming at this is I have a thing where I'm like, well, continuity is king. That's sort of in my stupid nerd brain. I'm like, well, no, like Spider-Man, Peter Parker is white, so Peter Parker is white. And then I'm like, oh, well, Miles Morales is half black, half Hispanic, so that he can also be Spider-Man. There's no problem with that. But I've actually after I logic through it, there was a Max Landis quote when he was talking about his father was teaching him a writing lesson, and his father asked him, okay, how do you kill a vampire? And little Max Landis was like, stake through the heart, sunlight, sign of the cross, garlic, etc. And his dad goes, no, vampires aren't real. You can kill them any way you want. And that to me really struck sort of a chord.
Right.
These are fake characters. Bond is not real. Spider-Man is not real. And so the more logical side and the more meaningful side for me for this is, while I have this weird sort of lizard brain part in my head about be like, oh, well, this character is this because they've been like this. The actual sort of what I would, I'm not calling myself enlightened, but the more sort of intelligent part of me leans towards, well, no, the importance of the ability of Batman to be black is infinitely more important than this bullshit continuity that's existed for less than like 100 years. Like it just doesn't matter. Like it does. These are fake things.
Yeah.
Right. And if we have the ability to have, we were talking about like kids seeing themselves in things. Bethany Towns, guy code hair and makeup. She came on our Wonder Woman episode, and she's African American. She was talking about how she always used to pretend to be Wonder Woman. And then I think her mother, her aunt, or something. I don't want to paraphrase, but like was like, no, you can't be Wonder Woman. You're black. And it's like, that's gotta be crushed. Like that's fucking off. Like, and I know she didn't probably mean it that way, but like, I don't know. It's just so, I think my vote, honestly, I mean, if we're voting, these characters could and should be anything. Right. It's just, it's how do we get sort of mainstream onto that boat?
Right. And I think like it comes down to something Carolina said earlier when I was talking about the car commercial I was doing, which is that like we think that the audience thinks one way, but it's actually up to us as creators to like just lead them where we want them to go. And if we think it's for the good, then we should.
Do you remember that commercial, the Cheerios commercial that came out about either it was a white woman with a black husband or a gay couple or something, and oh god, people were up in arms about like, how could you be showing a biracial couple or something like that. And then they did this experiment where they show the kids like, what do you think about this commercial? Oh, it's great. And what do you think about mommy and daddy? Oh, they love each other and they're cute. And do you see any problems with it? No. Yeah. Like for kids, it was like, no, black mom, white dad, whatever, it's all cool. So like, if we show a kid black Superman, they're not gonna be like, but Superman's white, he can't be black. Like, you know what I mean? I think that we if we start showing kids what can be, for them, it's not an issue. I don't want to mess with comic book lovers because I understand that there's this whole like history to it. So I can't. Yes, I think Batman can be black. do I understand where they're coming from? No, because I'm not, a huge fan that's been following these comics for years, right? I did have a conversation with a friend recently about Frozen, the movie.
Yeah.
Now they're making it into a Broadway musical, and both Disney and Broadway have been toying with making certain characters black and or diverse, whatever, ethnic, for the sake of inclusivity and diversity. And then some people are like, but Frozen is set in Scandinavia,
Right.
and historically they're all white.
Yeah.
So if I do understand that if the storyline has something very specific about where they're from, okay, let's not. Although I don't think Frozen's about being Scandinavian.
But here's the deal.
So for me, it's not a big deal.
The weird thing about that is, and I, you see that argument all the time about that sort of shit. Like, oh, well, that's not this because it's the story's about this. We were talking even before we started about Narcos, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about how some of the accents, different places, like they didn't really like focus on stuff. How many times has Hollywood fucked up an accent when it's supposed? How many times has every other country had a British accent? Where was the outcry for that shit when that was happening? Like, oh, well, it's set here, so like, no, like they're not fucking giving a shit about that. So all of a sudden, like that's an issue. It's like you can't have it fucking both ways. Like it's just a very, I think the worst part of the culture that I identify with, being these sort of nerdy people, is this well, this is the way a thing is, and that's how it always has to be sort of nonsense to it, and it's bullshit. You can there was the fucking movie Dogma. I don't know if you remember that Kevin Smith movie. It was talking about religion and how a belief is dangerous because like you can't really change a belief, but an idea you can change all the damn time. So like it's to have such a hard set thing is dangerous.
And the thing was, Matt, when we had this conversation, you were leaning more that way.
I was, and then we've since been 2 months since we've had it, and I've been like, no, like I get whenever I'm saying something that seems dumb or like simply, I always like, oh, my lizard brain thinks this. But it's
here's a counterpoint to that, and I can't believe I'm going to be the one to bring up the counterpoint.
Oh shit!
No.
Which is yeah.
Fuck Crash.
Yeah, exactly. No, but the thing that I was thinking about a little bit, and I've been doing some reading and just immersing myself in this idea about representation, and I started asking this question to myself, and I'm curious about how you guys think about it. But we've had examples recently of whitewashing. People talk about whitewashing all the time, where characters that were once traditionally Asian, black, whatever, suddenly cast
Ghost in a Shell.
Yeah, Ghost in a Shell, for example. Prince of Persia, suddenly played by Jake Gyllenhaal. The
most Persian man.
My question that I started thinking about in relation to, like, if I was writing the Batman movie and my Batman was suddenly, say I was doing The Dark Knight Returns and my Batman was being played by Denzel Washington. This is a circular way of thinking about this, but does whitewashing hurt white people?
In the long run, yes, because it keeps you thinking a certain thing is normal when it's not.
It also, but the thing that I think was interesting about
totally agree.
Delusion.
And I think ultimately it does. The other thing that it does is it nullifies historical context from a character, because as soon as you say Batman's black, and you suddenly think about the reason why, like, I have a mental block for black man. He's right up there with Blackula. For Batman being black. The reason I have a mental block for that is that that Batman's ethnicity doesn't really play a major part in his in why he's Batman. Bruce Wayne's wealth plays a major part, and so
the fact he's a sociopath.
But that could be any ethnicity, right? So like, and here's my point about that is that Batman comes from a place that is set, that is traditionally set in values that are eschewed. Like Batman was created in 1940, something like that. So it's traditionally set in values that suggest wealth is historically denoted by ethnicity. There's no historical context for black billionaires. No. But I'm going to get to a point here. I'm getting to a point. So the thing that I was thinking about is, yes, absolutely, Batman can be black. Absolutely, Superman can be Latino. Absolutely.
No, not that.
Oh, really?
Batman can be black, but no, I'm kidding.
That's where I draw the line.
Where will it stop?
Peter Parker could be Pakistani.
Yes.
Whatever.
Did that for alliteration.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I'm going for here.
Here we're going to be tearing down Washington statues and
Yeah,
fucking,
exactly.
Jefferson. Where do we draw the line?
But I think the thing that's interesting is that whitewashing has reduced the ability to tell nuanced, rich stories. And when you suddenly add ethnicity into it, I think the positive that comes out of it is that you start telling stories about you start including historical context into a character. Now you can either choose to write a historical context that ignores the past, that ignores that the civil rights movement happened in the 1960s and that Batman's parents would be, would not, wouldn't have this generational wealth that we would expect them to have. You could kind of just write past that and ignore it if you want to, or you can embrace it full on and you tell a richer, fuller story about Batman.
Well, I was just going to say, it's all made up anyway.
It is all
right. So let's show a rich black family in the 1940s. Why fucking not? I don't see why it's all made up.
Here's
all
the
of
converse to that then that might jump out of you. Can Black Panther be white?
No, because it's the opposite problem.
Yeah, so I was thinking that too.
We are fighting against history and how everything's been white power for so many years. So that's where it turns racist, where it's whitewashing again.
So
that's the thing.
If everything was on an even playing field,
right,
then Black Panther could be white.
Exactly.
There was no need for a Black Panther.
Exactly.
Yeah, Black Panther probably wouldn't exist if everything was on an even playing field.
No, but it would. It would just be. It would because it'd just be everything across the board.
Right.
Thank you. That's exactly what it is.
yeah.
If we started on an equal playing field,
but it's not.
Then sure.
Yeah, but Black Panther came out of the fact that there was no representation of African American characters. So if everything was even and Batman was black and Superman was Latino and there are a few white characters and we had this sort of nice sort of melting pot, Black Panther may not exist.
True, but there'd
be a different character that fill that role.
There wouldn't be need for it because we're already representing everything.
Damien, even as a not sort of comic book head, as far as the Black Panther movie, how have you seen the trailer? Did you ever get a chance to look at it?
I saw the trailer.
Yeah.
Wait, that's so racist. You're asking the black dude about Black Panther.
Yeah,
I gotta say, dude, you hit
That's
it.
obligatory.
Well, no,
but it's not racist. That's
I'm
just
kidding.
obligatory.
no.
No, go ahead.
I'm kidding.
Got to do it.
No,
It's part of
because my point before I sort of asked the question was from my perspective, from my frigid New Hampshire perspective,
Right.
It's the most interesting just Marvel world that I've seen because it's different.
Right.
It's a gamble, but at the same time, I love the Marvel movies, but even and Shahir is going to love that I'm going to say this. They do start to sort of bleed a little bit together based on Doctor Strange is a white guy surgeon who does a thing and gets powers. Iron Man's a genius billionaire playboy white guy philanthropist who does the thing. So to see something just different out there is far more interesting to me as a concept. Actually, side note, let me go back. You said you thought it was a gamble.
Well, I was, what was I listening to? I was listening to a podcast. Actually, I was listening to some podcast and I'm trying to figure out who it was. I can't remember, so I don't want to discredit anybody, but it was somebody that deals in that it works in Hollywood.
Sure.
And they were very excited about Black Panther. I forget who the fuck it was. And they were like, yo, shout out to Ryan Coogler. I'm calling this for him already because he's going to win. But at the same time, he was like, it's a gamble because if this shit don't go everybody's like, well, Marvel has done well historically. The only thing that was different was all these black folks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The hit of Marvel actually came out, the Marvel comics, and said something to that effect when the monthly sales were down. And his comment, and again, I want to couch this and it's probably taken out of context, yada, 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 was that what he said, what the market research is telling us, people don't want diversity anymore.
But see, that's bullshit.
Or they have too much diversity.
People don't want, and this is the sad truth of it, people don't want comics anymore. That's the real thing about it.
That's probably the thing about it.
Is it? Why is Comic-Con so big all over the world?
Comic-Con isn't comics anymore. Comic-Con is all films and
toys
television and toys and nonsense. They push every year. New York Comic-Con, I go every year. The Artist Alley, where the actual comic book writers and illustrators live, is pushed to the far back because Game of Thrones is coming out, or like stuff that sort of fits into that world.
But wait, if we're talking about movies that are being made that we don't want diversity, everyone still wants comic book movies.
Yes, but see, so Marvel was talking about sales of comic books. So Marvel
books. I'm sorry, I thought you.
Marvel was doing this initiative, like I said, they were sort of just shuffling the deck, changing ethnicities of characters, passing the mantles, etc., and then it wasn't selling well. Well, spoiler alert, it wasn't selling well beforehand. So it's not that's not the reason, even if they sort of say it's the reason. The interesting thing is, as far as it being a gamble, like. Oh, you were saying? Sorry.
Well, back to I just want to. Well, one, I want to credit. It was Will Packer.
Okay.
Will Packer is executive producer of a bunch of movies. Think Like a Man, Part 1, 2, The Gospel, bunch of things. But he's been winning. Girls Trip. He's been winning. He's a hugely successful Black Hollywood producer who is
ludicrously successful.
Ludicrously successful. But it's still when they bring in these big numbers, it's still like, wow. It's still this whole fucking thing. But back to your point of people don't want this. I totally believe people don't know what the fuck they want.
Yeah, people don't know.
What I mean?
That is
people
also
don't
true.
never know what they want until they get it. Like, oh shit, this is what I wanted. But they didn't know they wanted that. They didn't. They were presented.
Dude, I
with
didn't
some
know
dope
I wanted
shit.
to see a gazillion women fighting.
Right.
In Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
That scene is kick-ass, and everybody talks about it because yes, it's historical. I had never seen women kicking ass only women kicking ass like that.
Yeah.
You know, and so then. You
It
gotta
was
rack your brain
historical.
and go back. Exactly.
I didn't see it. No, I ain't see it. Was it a historical
Wonder Woman.
it was
Wonder
woman's fight
It
that I
is-
missed?
It's historical in the sense that like
It was a
nobody-
moment.
It was nobody has ever seen. I don't know. It's 20 minutes of
okay.
Historic,
Just women
cinematic,
fighting.
historically.
Oh,
Themyscira,
it's groundbreaking.
Themyscira didn't actually exist in history.
Right. Okay.
Historical in that it happened in
I was
2016.
like, damn,
Where's that
classes
island?
did I take?
Right.
How do I get to
and
that
so
island?
then I'm just like, I want to see chicks fighting like that more. And I loved the movie because the editing was also different. The action was edited differently, and I enjoyed it more than I enjoy other action movies because as a chick, that's how I like those fights going down, and they were really badass too. You know, so this is my feminist self saying blah blah blah, but you know, it is crazy that we'd never seen that before, and so many people enjoyed it.
It's so interesting because we're like, again, people were thinking, oh, Wonder Woman's a gamble because it's a female-led superhero movie. Oh my god,
Directed by a woman.
Directed by a woman, and then it was a huge financial success. People are saying the same thing about Black
What?
Panther.
It's always a fucking gamble.
Yeah, that's the thing. And going back to sort of what you said, Damien, it's no one knows what they want. I'm so sick of fucking.
Sorry, go.
This is a new podcast.
I'll let you finish.
Scatcast.
We're literally no one knows what they want. I'm very sick of focus groups and all this stuff and worrying about what the demo will be and how many. I mean, it's funny you brought up even YouTubers before, like, we need to get some sort of social influencer involved in this or blah blah blah.
Yeah.
No, you fucking don't. Make good shit, then tell people about your good shit.
Right.
You're trying to get free advertising based on people that already have followings. Depending, that's a different thing. But it's like I was having this conversation with one of my executives at the show I'm working on right now. Just make something good,
Yeah.
and it can be anything. Sorry,
I think good art is a risk all the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, I just
but
feel
then
like
back
that.
to your comment about like, well, if nobody goes see Black Panther, then well, fuck, no one wants to see black movies.
It could be the case that Black Panther was just a bad movie if no one wants to see it.
That's-
you know?
But people are gonna blame it on the black aspect.
Yeah,
or if Wonder Woman was a flop, you know what? We just can't have female directors anymore and female leads. And but if there, I don't know another Marvel comic movie that flopped about like some white fucking superhero. But you know what I mean? You don't say, it's because there was a white dude as a lead.
Well,
I guess
actually,
we don't make any more of those.
You know what's interesting? Side note. The last sort of flop.
Ghost in the Shell flop.
Goes in the shelf flop
might have
because
flopped for that reason.
But also, so the Netflix series that are doing the whole thing, Iron Fist, is a tip. It's just, they should have never kept him white. Like, he's a character who's like a white dude that crashed.
yeah.
No, he's not. He's white in the comic.
Oh, okay.
But it's that antiquated like
We just don't
70s
live in that
shit.
time anymore.
Like, it's like, he crashed in this monastery with monks and they trained him, and now he's the best kung fu. The white guy's the best kung fu guy. they made this show, Danny Rand being white. There's no reason he had to be white right now. Like it would make way more sense otherwise, and they kept it. That's the first sort of Marvel intrinsic sort of flop. So, but and also Inhumans that just came out is getting real shit reviews. So I'm actually, this is kind of strange, but I'm glad those are flopping because if everything was successful up to Black Panther, then for whatever reason Black Panther wasn't a success, then they'd blame it on the black aspect of it. But if Black Panther flopped, people are like, well, it's black. It's like, look at fucking Iron Fist. Look at Inhumans. These are just, they didn't make it right. I think they're going to make it right, personally.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It should be good. I mean, I'm not the biggest comic book fan, right? But I do appreciate the fact that they got Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yeah, writing Black Panther.
They got Ryan Coogler. They got people that are dope involved.
Yeah.
I will say this as a black person. I'm gonna go ahead and see it. But I know in the black community it'd be this type of marketing which kills me, where it's like, now this is a black film.
Yeah, right.
It's like get out there and vote.
Hip hop on the trailer.
You better go ahead now. You got to represent now.
There'll be someone raising the black fist in the trailer just to like signal to everyone, hey, this
I'm just happy that there's a lot of black people winning. I'll tell you this, speaking of just representation and like, people like you on. I just saw, I'm late as fuck, but I just saw Girls Trip.
Right.
And that movie's black as fuck.
Right. And I hear it's fantastic.
That shit is great.
Yeah.
It's a good ass movie. People are baffled. Oh my goodness, 4 lead black women.
And why blew the other one out of the water?
It blew the white version of it out of the water.
It blew Bridesmaids. It blew the Party. Rough Night. Shout out to Rough Night. Yeah. It blew them out the water. It was like, but the shit was good. And the thing was, it was so black.
Yeah.
Like it was black. Like it. The whole movie took place at Essence Festival,
right?
Which is black,
which is the blackest thing.
You know what I mean? But I love it because it celebrated in a way that
it's showing you guys part of your culture.
Right? Absolutely. But it's not just showing us; it's showing the world. Like it's a movie that everybody can see.
In terms of representation, though, you're seeing something that you would go to essentially, which is also part of it. Like, of course, the rest of the world should see it, but you know what I mean? Like when you see your shit up there, you're also like.
You're like, okay, they did it right. But to that point, because it always feels weird. I don't feel racist about it because I'm not a white guy. So it's like, whoa. Yeah. But
you're not a white guy.
Nah. But I get back to the
white.
Well, I'm trying. But it goes back to the whole thing. Like when I always feel weird, conflicted about this. Like when you see, like for instance, you were saying like I don't see a whole lot of Indian people. And like you see the Big Sick, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
we talked about the Big Sick.
I'll think about my Indian cats. I'll think about Akash. I'll think about,
Shout out to Akash.
Like when I see, I love Ali Wong to death. She, what I mean? I've known her forever. When I see her kill with Baby Cobra, not only am I telling the world, but I'm like, in particular, let me tell my Asian folks, I don't know if you know about Ali Wong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's always weird. It's like if your white friend and say, hey, have you seen Black Panther? Check it out. Your people are making strides.
I think you hit on something that's kind of like really important though in all of this conversation, which is that in the case of Black Panther, it's got Ta-Nehisi Coates. I don't know if he's actually writing the movie. I know he's writing some comic books.
He wrote the comic books. I don't know if he's writing the movie.
I don't know if he's writing the movie, but Ryan Coogler as well, directing it. And I think the thing that's really important, and I'm going to relate this to a personal story of mine, is this sense of like authenticity in the creation of the project itself.
Right.
And that, I think the problem is we think that only goes as far as the director writer.
Right.
And I think it goes much further and deeper than that. It goes to the producer, the studio.
Right.
And Chris Rock used to have like a great line about this, was like, what, because if you look at statistics, for example, the USC School of Media Diversity and Social Change, like measure how many, what ethnicities are being represented. Right. And the one that's historically really underrepresented is Hispanic in film. Like there are three of the 4,500 films they reviewed, 3.1% were Hispanic compared to 17.8% of the actual population.
Right.
And one thing Chris Rock was talking about was like, why is it there are no Hispanic people working in film and television? Like, why is it such a small number? Like, are you telling me that Hispanic people can only do janitorial duties? Like, and is that it? And he was like, like if we start thinking about it differently, you might. I think the phrase he used is David Giffen could be like mopping your floor right now, and David Giffen is the former head of DreamWorks. But like we don't think about people being represented that way.
Yeah.
The thing I wanted to mention was that authentic, like what people I think are looking for, regardless, like that question of like, what is it people want? I think what people are looking for at the very core of it is authenticity. Like they even if like if I'm watching Manchester by the Sea,
right,
which is a fairly
there are my people.
Yeah, a fairly white movie. What I'm looking for though, and what I respond to in that movie is a sense of authenticity. Right. I'm like, no, this is really this person's people.
It was authentic.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And the thing that, like, again, I think I've pointed to like 2 or 3 things that I think that I think are faults in my brain. Mm-hmm. But I directed a film that was entirely in Spanish, that was set in the Dominican Republic.
La Loteria?
La Loteria, yeah. And I did that thinking I could do that. I was just like, okay, I'm going to make this story Spanish, and I'm going to, and I have a couple of producers with me, and we were going to go film in the Dominican Republic, and we did it. But in the end, we couldn't. And the one thing I always think about is that we cast a Puerto Rican actor as the lead, mm-hmm. and we cast a Spanish Swedish girl who she was mixed race as the female lead. Mm-hmm. And it was this interesting moment when we showed the film to people. So for people who weren't Dominican, like just accepted it as a different language in the Dominican Republic, and were like, okay, yes, this is true. And I would say, like, because the story itself was personal, that I think they responded to that and glossed over the thing. But whenever we showed it to Dominican people, they immediately, without fail, we're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. This girl is not Dominican. And it was a sudden wake up call for me. It was like, now the tricky thing here was that in the casting process, the girl we cast, wonderful actress, really was the best person. Right. She really, like, we did have a Dominican actress who came through, and we tested her with the guy and with our lead, and the chemistry just wasn't there. And when we tested the actress that we had, the chemistry was there. She was a wonderful actress. It really just made sense. But what I did was I had kind of made something that I wanted to be authentic and true into something that wasn't true, because of the process. Sure. Right. And I think, like, what happens there is that the process right now is set up. If in Hollywood, if having Ryan Gosling in your movie means that you will get like probably $50 million back on your box office, that's why La La Land, which should be a minority cast.
Will he be saving jazz?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Where a film like La La Land should be a minority cast of unknowns, but if you can cast Ryan Gosling and know that you've got a big box office draw, then that's what you got to do. And I think that's what the historical. I've been reading a lot of bell hooks this week, and the historical, the context that she puts it in is like white supremacy is not just like outward, like Nazis marching on the street kind of thing. It's a system which is set up to enable one group to succeed versus another, and that goes back to the Malcolm X, black is this, white is that. And I think like while we can all kind of rally around the idea of Black Batman, we all can get behind that. But if there's an economic argument that says Black Batman will make $30 million less than Christian Bale Batman, why aren't we choosing a black actor that's just as successful? It still wouldn't work. No, because black actors don't have the opportunity to be as successful. Exactly. Yeah. The system set it up that way.
And the way that the system, and again, this is if we could run it, just sort of in closing, it's like, okay, the system is set up that way 100%. We've determined that. The interesting thing that I find is this excuse of like, oh, black Batman would make, like, if we're looking at the hard line of how the world is right now, Black Batman would make $30 million less. Let's just say that was a number that the studio came up with, and that's their excuse as to why. Right. Well, here's a fucking idea. Maybe that's coming from a place of not only inherent sort of favoritism to one side, but also a side of laziness. That's a side of laziness on the production side and the producing side and the advertising side.
Oh yeah,
because
it's all about marketing.
Because we've proven the United States' marketing system has made us think we need so much shit very quickly. Right. I watched a hilarious thing on Cracked the other day about milk. Like, it was an honest sort of milk commercial. Yeah. And it was like how it's just milk. We've just been convinced that, like, oh, it's good for your bones. And like, no, it's fucking not. So like, we've been able to market all this shit. All you have to do is just market it. And you can do it. But the truth of the matter is, because of all of the intrinsic racism, or however you want to sort of put it, they're not going racism and laziness.
Well, Bell Hooks is an interesting. She calls it white supremacist capitalist patriarchy.
Sure, So because of that, that's why they think they can use these things. Because if you think about it on a base surface level, like, oh well, that's just the way it is. It's not going to make the money. No, it's not going to make that money based on your current model of how you do shit. And if you just twisted it a bit, you'd spend the same amount of money and make more money back. Like, it's
I guess what I'm saying is that there are exceptions to the rule, but the rule still exists, and the rule exists for a reason. And that's not to say that the rule shouldn't be broken, but I'm saying it's this case, like Barack Obama talked about when he was trying to implement Obamacare, that the wheel can only be turned a few degrees at a time. Yeah. And that's a tricky thing to grapple with, because it means that you're incrementally failing each time as well. And that's, like me as a parent and a writer, every time I default to white, I'm incrementally failing. Yes. And that's the kind of the takeaway that I wanted to bring to this conversation is that I think as a writer, as a director, I should think about these things. But I also know that I work in a commercial economic environment that most oftentimes doesn't permit me either the power or the time or the efficiency to actually implement these ideas. But maybe that's just laziness on my part. I don't know. And it's a curious place to be in, coming up against the, coming to the field with the optimism and hope that you have for a Black Batman, and realizing sometimes that the world isn't ready, not because it doesn't want it and doesn't realize it doesn't want it, but that the wheel that the world turns on isn't going to move at your speed.
And that wheel is manipulated by a lot of hype and
by historical context as well.
Fear and shit. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
But if you don't try it, it'll never work. Yeah. You know what I mean? So if you spew this narrative that, Black Batman ain't going to work because Black folks don't like to see superheroes and shit like that, people will be like, you know what I mean? But the thing is, unless you try, and then what's funny is the response to when it does well, it becomes, oh no, it's an exception to the rule.
Yeah.
Even though this be like the 6th or 7th Black movie that has opened well, or whatever type of movie that has opened well that strays from the norm. Is people are, like it is when you are, if you talk about white supremacy, if you're considered the norm, and you got to cede that to other people, that's threatening. You know what I mean? It's like, well, what about white folks? Nobody want to see white movies no more? You know what I mean? Like, get the fuck out of here. It's enough people for everything. It's just marketed well. This is America. That's what we do.
Well, also, I heard you say twice or 3 times that you are never going to see your people on screen.
I think what I was saying was that I haven't seen them yet. Right. Hopefully.
But you will put them on screen. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm being optimistic. And right. But I do think it's changing slowly. And like the day I start like producing for real, not just my iPhone and my iMovie editing skills for YouTube, I'm going to put a friggin' Hispanic at the lead of something. You know what I mean? And she might be half Colombian, half Spanish, half whatever. And you're just going to be Fiji mixed with India, Kiwi. So I think that because we are the mixes we are, and then we write these characters, we're going to be putting them on screen, and and slowly we evolve, and it's taken forever, and there are still a ton of stereotypical things happening, and it's still a white male old person run entertainment industry, but slowly I'm seeing little light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
We have to
Guys,
believe that.
We did it.
Did we fix it? Did we fix it?
We fixed the world.
Yay!
We fixed racism, guys.
Well, this
thank you.
This hopefully has not been the only podcast about representation in Hollywood.
That's a good sentiment.
No. Yeah. Thank you, Damien, Carolina. Thank you so much for coming on
and indulging in this conversation.
Yeah. Totally. Carolina, when you are not hacking the planet, where can folks find you?
I'm on. I lately Instagram a lot. It's my last name Ravassa, and Twitter. I always put all my stuff up there. Carolina Ravassa on Twitter, and please follow my YouTube channel, Hispanglo-Saxon, because I'm a Hispanic and an Anglo-Saxon.
And you talk about basically everything that we've been going on about
Yes.
for this last hour or so.
I still love in the intro of every episode. It's
This is Carolina.
Yeah.
It's Carolina.
Whatever.
Yeah.
What about you, Mr. Lemon?
Well, where can you find me at? I'm hosting True TV's Comedy Knockout. We coming back, new episodes.
Yeah.
I got a web series. I do have an old web series, D Lemon in the Morning. You should check that out. So
I love, yes.
good looking out. I appreciate that. But I got a podcast called In the Conversation.
Which
Me
is
and my
fantastic.
man Ali Muhammad, man. Thank you. I appreciate it. We come out every Wednesday. This Wednesday we got Rob Power, who directed the finale of Power. Talking
Oh,
that
wow.
shit. So it's a good one.
Nice.
Yeah. Rob Hardy. I'm sorry. I said Rob Power.
I was like, is
Rob
that
Power.
Rob
Yeah, I was
Power?
like,
He
this
directs
is
Power?
Party.
The producer must have been like, this is the guy. This is the guy. That's how Lucas Cage started directing Luke Cage.
And Shahir, I had something for you and I lost it. Where can people find you,
You
buddy?
can find me at ShahirDaud.com. That's ShahirDaud. Robot music video is coming out September 15th.
What's it actually called? I know it's not called Robot
It's called
Music Video.
Automatica by Nigel Stanford. You can find it at his website, www.nigelstanford.com.
It's the coolest fucking thing. It's so fucking. I hate blowing smoke up his ass because he's already a little bit
bit of
but
an egotist.
it's wonderful.
And we will have a special episode to accompany that.
That is true.
Which will be a lot of fun.
More special in this one?
This was a special.
I think this is pretty fucking
Specialist.
special.
This is pretty good.
This is the ludicrousest specialist
This
video.
is the specialist ludicrously. This is the most
Hilariously-
ludicrously specialist,
Hilarious.
hilarious, represented.
Diverse ethnic.
There you go.
Matt, where can you polysyllabically tell us where you exist?
Wow. You can do that at my website, Matthew Kroll, MATTHWKROL.com. You can find me, Skeletor, the number 4, PREZ on Instagram or Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also, you can find all of our stuff from the only podcast about movies at onlymoviepodcast.com, or you can email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com.
We really want to hear what the audience has
so
to say about
fast.
this episode.
Yeah, please write us in. Let us know what you think. Tell us if you think Batman can be black or could be anything, and then we will argue with you if you do.
It's weird because we came to a consensus right away, which I think is what you do when you're with, when you're with other people. It's like you might have an unpopular opinion on your own, but when you're with other people, you have
Not only that, it's just ideas, man. It's just, I mean, we talked about it. It's talking through shit, and then you realize where you're right and where you're sort of wrong from a humanitarian standpoint.
All right. Here
Anyway.
New York City, one film. The film has been chosen. The film is Spike Lee's Crooklyn.
Oh, nice.
As I voted. So we will try to have an episode about that. If
We
you
will
see
do it.
Crooklyn, please write us in.
Thank you, everyone listening. Thank you, Damien, Carolina, for coming. See you next week.
Bye.